Most students have either an activities section or a volunteer section, or maybe even both on their resumes. This is a chance for you to show how active you are on campus and in your community. Which sections you include or whether you combine these depends really on what and how much you have to list. If you have just one or two volunteer experiences, it probably makes the most sense to just include those right within the activities section. If you have a lot of volunteer experience, or if highlighting that volunteer experience is important for your field, like if you're majoring, say, in social work or education, for instance, then having a separate section actually makes good sense. So what can you include under activities? Like I mentioned, you can include your volunteer experience right here. You should also list any official on-campus activities in which you participate. So are you in concert choir, lacrosse team, any clubs? Also, if you're a member of like a civic organization back home, all of that should show up here. Even if it isn't related to your field or your major, we still want it on here. What you're doing is you're showing that you got out of your dorm room and you participated in campus life. That being said, sometimes your activities actually are related to your major. Maybe you're an ag major and you participate in ag club, or you want to work in politics and you're involved in a political club on campus. If it is related to your field, those types of activities really should be at the top of the list because we don't want the reader to miss it, okay? You really don't need to list dates for these activities, and because of that, we don't have to put them in reverse chronological order like we do for jobs. We can prioritize them by importance and relevance. Volunteer experiences can really range in time and commitment level, so let's talk about what's worth listing on the resume for volunteer stuff. If the entire range of time that you volunteered was less than a week, then it's probably not worth including at that point unless it's super relevant to your field. Maybe you only volunteer for 1 hour at a time, but you did it for a year, that's worth listing. If it was just 1 week, but all day every day, like a service trip, that's worth listing. On the other hand, if it was a one-time, one-day event, say like Special Olympics or something like that, I would recommend not including it, unless of course you're a special ed major. Also, listing dates can be helpful in this section because it can show the length of time that you were committed to this project or this organization. So how do we list these activities and experiences? In most cases, we're going to start with your role, a comma, then the organization name, and then a location. So let's look at some examples here. We've got treasurer of ag club, volunteering at Kid Zone, maybe you're captain of an athletic team, or maybe you're in concert choir. So notice that I'm using the official names of the organizations here. For Kid Zone, I actually added to the name a little bit so that it was clear what kind of program it is. Sometimes you don't have a specific role to list, like concert choir here. In that case, you just list the name of the group, and that's fine. Notice we're not including any descriptions or bullet points here. You just want your role and the organization information. Now that it appears on your resume, it's fair game to talk about it in an interview if you need to. But usually adding descriptions of these activities on the resume itself is not worth the space it's going to take up. As with any rule, there's exceptions, but for our purposes, let's just stick to one line per activity. One last note. Please be aware of any Dordt vocab that you are using. For instance, terms like PLEA should not appear on your resume. If you want to include that experience, you absolutely can, but you need to retitle it something like Spring Break Service Trip, or something that describes what the experience is, because the reader is not going to know what PLEA means. They're going to have no idea. So remember, the goal is that the reader gets a fuller picture of who you are as a person and how you're participating in your community. So we want to make sure everything is really clear and understandable for the reader.